The Kraxan Empire's flagship Eternal Dawn emerged from hyperspace above Helios 7, its crystalline hull refracting starlight in dazzling patterns. Admiral Vexthor stood on the command deck, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he studied the small human colony through the ship's quantum imaging array. The settlement appeared painfully primitive to his enhanced vision. Simple prefab structures, basic shield generators, and defensive positions that wouldn't have impressed even the most junior Kraxan tactical officer. Remarkable, he mused, mandibles clicking in amusement. They've managed to establish a foothold on this hostile world using nothing but industrial-age technology. Around him, the bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. The Kraxan Empire had spent the last century expanding their dominion across the galaxy, incorporating or subjugating dozens of species. None had been quite so quaint as these humans. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the colony's operations center, studying the massive alien vessel through their most powerful telescope. Unlike the Kraxan's quantum imaging, this was a conventional optical device, albeit one crafted with exceptional human precision. She watched holographic displays flicker to life around her, each one powered by good old-fashioned quantum processors, rather than the psychic interfaces their enemies preferred. "Status report," she barked, maintaining her composure despite the gravity of the situation. The colony of New Horizon, population 50,000, had known first contact was inevitable. They'd prepared for this moment since breaking ground 5 years ago. Lieutenant Rodriguez, her head of tactical operations, pulled up a series of readouts on the main screen. "Their ship matches nothing in our database, Commander. Energy signatures are off the charts. We're detecting some kind of crystalline metamaterial in their hull structure that seems to bend physics itself. And our countermeasures, all in place. The mining tunnels have been converted to bunkers as planned. Civilian evacuation to the deep shelters is 90% complete. The surface defense grid is," he paused, allowing himself a slight smile, "appears to be malfunctioning exactly as intended." Chen nodded. The Kraxan would be scanning their defenses, building a picture of a struggling colony barely able to maintain its own infrastructure. Every piece of advanced technology had been carefully hidden underground or disguised as something more primitive. Even their communications were being routed through old-style radio transmitters, making them appear decades behind current human capabilities. Above them, Admiral Vexthor was growing increasingly confident. His sensors showed a settlement plagued by power fluctuations and equipment failures. Their weapons appeared to be nothing more than mass drivers, simple projectile weapons that his ship's energy shields could easily deflect. This would be less a conquest than a mercy mission, bringing these primitives into the enlightened age of Kraxan technology. "Deploy the first wave," he commanded. "Standard subjugation protocol. Their defensive capabilities are negligible. No need for a full assault formation." The Kraxan landing craft descended through the atmosphere like falling stars, their crystalline hulls glowing with protective energy fields. Inside each ship, warriors in psychically enhanced battle armor prepared for glory, their weapons charged with enough power to level cities. None of them noticed the subtle changes in the planet's magnetic field, or the way certain rock formations seemed to shift slightly as they passed. In her command center, Shen watched the enemy deployment through a network of carefully concealed sensors. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Kraxan were following the exact approach pattern their simulations had predicted, their arrogance making them predictable. "They're within the outer perimeter," Rodriguez reported. "All teams in position. Waiting for your order, Commander." Chen took a deep breath, thinking of all the preparation that had led to this moment. The Kraxan weren't the first advanced species to underestimate humanity, and they wouldn't be the last. While aliens focused on pushing the boundaries of physics, humans had mastered something far more powerful: the art of deception. "Commence Operation Trojan," she ordered. "Let's show our visitors why they should have done their homework about Earth's military history." As the Kraxan warriors began their descent, none of them realized they were flying into a trap 5 years in the making. They had expected to find primitive humans cowering behind simple barriers. Instead, they were about to learn a harsh lesson about the danger of judging a species by their apparent level of technology. The first sign that something was wrong came when their sensors suddenly went dark. The crystalline ship's sophisticated guidance systems began reporting impossible readings, as if the very geography of the planet was shifting beneath them. In the operations center, Chen allowed herself a small smile. The real battle for Helios 7 was about to begin, and the Kraxen were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology. It was their capacity for innovation. The first Kraxen assault team hit the ground running, their crystalline armor gleaming in Helios 7's harsh sunlight. Squad leader Nexvol activated his psychic battle interface, expecting to see the usual tactical overlay of enemy positions and threat assessments. Instead, his enhanced senses detected nothing but background noise and scattered heat signatures from the seemingly abandoned defensive positions. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying through the squad's telepathic network. His warriors spread out across the rocky terrain, their weapons primed for combat that seemed increasingly unlikely. The human fortifications looked even more pathetic up close. Simple metal barriers, primitive projectile turrets, and what appeared to be manually operated sensor arrays. Deep beneath the surface, Commander Chen watched the alien formation through a network of quantum-entangled cameras disguised as chunks of ordinary rock. The Kraxen's movements were precise, professional, and completely predictable. They were following textbook invasion protocols, clearly visible to anyone who had studied their previous conquests. "Activate the resonance field," she ordered. Lieutenant Rodriguez keyed in a series of commands, and hidden emitters buried throughout the landscape hummed to life. The devices had been designed specifically to interact with the crystalline structure of Kraxen technology, using their own advanced materials against them. Above ground, Nexvol's squad suddenly stumbled as their armor systems began to fluctuate. The crystalline matrices that enhanced their natural abilities started generating conflicting signals, making their psychic interfaces unreliable. It was like trying to see through water that constantly shifted and rippled. "Something's wrong with our gear," one warrior reported, his telepathic voice tinged with confusion. "The crystals aren't responding correctly." Before Nexvol could respond, the ground beneath their feet seemed to come alive. What they had dismissed as simple rock formations turned out to be carefully disguised weapon platforms. But instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, these launchers fired something far more primitive and far more effective. Specially designed kinetic penetrators, accelerated by electromagnetic rails, streaked toward the Kraxen formation. Their energy shields, calibrated to deflect high-energy weapons, proved almost useless against solid projectiles moving at hypersonic velocities. The first volley tore through their ranks with devastating precision. "Impossible," Nexvol shouted, both verbally and telepathically. "Their weapons are ballistic. How are they targeting us through our stealth fields?" He didn't realize that the humans had developed their targeting systems using completely different principles than the Kraxen's crystal-based technology. Chen's voice crackled through hidden speakers across the battlefield, broadcasting on frequencies the Kraxen couldn't block because they had never considered them worth monitoring. "Welcome to Helios 7, gentlemen. I apologize for the deception, but we needed to ensure you committed your forces fully before revealing our true capabilities." The remaining Kraxen warriors scrambled for cover, but found that what looked like random debris and rock formations had been carefully positioned to channel them into predetermined killing zones. Their advanced armor, designed to shrug off energy weapons, offered little protection against tungsten rods moving at speeds that would make their ancestors' railguns look like toys. Admiral Vexthor watched in growing horror from orbit as his first wave of elite troops was systematically dismantled by what his sensors still insisted was primitive technology. He ordered an immediate deployment of heavy support units, not realizing he was playing directly into the humans' hands. Underground, Chen nodded to her tactical team. "They're responding exactly as anticipated. Begin Phase 2. She turned to a holographic display, showing the positions of their hidden defense grid. Let's show them what happens when you mistake simplicity for weakness. The next wave of Kraxan troops descended into chaos. Their crystalline dropships, already struggling with the resonance field, now faced a barrage of electromagnetic pulses carefully tuned to exploit the quantum properties of their hull materials. Ships began falling from the sky, their sophisticated systems reduced to useless chunks of crystal. But the humans' true masterstroke became apparent when the Kraxan finally attempted to regroup. Their standard tactical protocols called for establishing a defensive perimeter using their advanced shield technology. As the warriors activated their group shields, the overlapping energy fields created exactly the pattern the humans had been waiting for. Hidden quantum frequency generators, synchronized perfectly with the shield's resonant frequencies, turned the Kraxan's own defensive technology into a weapon against them. The crystalline matrices in their armor began to vibrate sympathetically, creating cascading failures that rendered their most advanced systems useless. In the command center, Rodriguez couldn't help but smile as he watched the alien formation collapse into disorder. "Think they've figured it out yet, Commander?" Chen shook her head, watching as the supposedly superior force was systematically dismantled by what they had dismissed as primitive technology. "They're still trying to understand how we're blocking their advanced systems. They haven't realized we're not blocking them at all. We're letting them work exactly as designed, just not in the way they intended." The battle for Helios 7 was far from over, but its outcome was already becoming clear. The Kraxan would learn, as others had before them, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their ability to understand and exploit the technology of others, even while appearing to have none of their own. Admiral Vexthor's command bridge had descended into barely controlled chaos. Holographic displays flickered with damage reports, while his officers argued over conflicting sensor data. The humans' primitive colony had transformed into a deadly trap that was systematically destroying his most elite forces. "How are they doing this?" he demanded, smashing a scaled fist against his crystalline command console. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They shouldn't even be able to detect our stealth systems, let alone counter them." His chief science officer, Dr. Ixlara, studied the sensor readings with growing fascination. "Admiral, I don't believe they are countering our systems, at least, not in the way we thought. They're using our own technology's properties against us. It's elegant, in a brutally primitive way." Meanwhile, on the surface, the human resistance was preparing for their boldest move yet. Captain Jack Torres led a small team through the underground tunnel network, each member carrying what appeared to be simple mechanical tools and weapons. Their mission: infiltrate the Kraxan command ship using the aliens' assumptions about human technology against them. "Remember," Torres whispered to his team as they approached a concealed exit point, "they're looking for energy signatures, quantum fluctuations, anything that screams advanced tech. They're not looking for what we're actually using." He patted the seemingly primitive rifle slung across his back, a weapon that contained no electronics, no crystals, and no power source that Kraxan sensors could detect. Above them, the Kraxan were deploying their third wave of troops, this time with modified shield frequencies and enhanced sensor suites. They had finally realized that the humans were somehow using their crystalline technology against them, so they adjusted their tactics accordingly. It was exactly what Commander Chen had been waiting for. "They're adapting," she noted from her command center, watching the new deployment patterns. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Let's show them why that's a mistake." With a series of commands, she activated the colony's true defense system, a network of quantum-entangled particles that had been carefully scattered throughout the battlefield, disguised as natural mineral deposits. The Kraxan's modified shields, now operating on new frequencies, suddenly found themselves trying to compensate for quantum fluctuations they couldn't possibly have predicted. Their attempts to adapt had actually made them more vulnerable to the humans' carefully planned countermeasures. Torres and his team used this chaos to their advantage. While the Kraxan focused their sensors on detecting advanced technology, the infiltration team moved through their defenses using equipment that would have been familiar to soldiers centuries ago, with a few crucial modifications that made them nearly invisible to modern detection methods. It's like they've forgotten that simple solutions can still work. Torres muttered as his team attached themselves to the outer hull of a Kraxan supply ship using magnetic climbers that required no power source. They're so focused on detecting our non-existent energy weapons that they don't even notice us literally climbing aboard. Dr. Ixlera was the first to realize the true extent of the human strategy. "Admiral," she reported, her voice tight with professional concern, "I believe we've been approaching this entirely wrong. These humans, they're not technological primitives. They're technological minimalists. They're using our expectations against us." But the revelation came too late. Torres' team had already breached the Kraxan command ship's outer hull using tools that were, by the Empire's standards, practically Stone Age. While the ship's defenses scanned for energy weapons and shield penetrations, simple mechanical cutters sliced through access panels with precision. They've created a tactical doctrine that exploits our reliance on advanced technology, Ixlera continued, growing more agitated as she understood the full implications. Every time we try to counter them with more sophisticated systems, we actually give them more vectors to exploit. Admiral Vexthor was about to respond when alarms began blaring throughout his ship. Somehow, humans had penetrated their defenses and were moving through the vessel, but the internal sensors couldn't get a lock on them. Their primitive equipment registered as nothing more than background noise to the sophisticated detection systems. In the colony's command center, Chen allowed herself a small smile as she received Torres' confirmation signal. Sometimes, she mused to her staff, the most advanced solution is knowing when not to use advanced technology at all. The Kraxan Empire was about to learn that their greatest weakness wasn't a flaw in their technology. It was their inability to conceive of an enemy that could defeat them without matching their level of technological sophistication. Their pride had led them to dismiss humanity as primitive, never considering that this perception might be exactly what the humans wanted them to think. Captain Torres' team moved through the crystalline corridors of the Kraxan flagship like ghosts. Their simple tools and mechanically powered equipment remained invisible to the ship's sophisticated security systems, which were calibrated to detect energy weapons and powered armor. The aliens had built their entire defense doctrine around countering threats that matched their own technological level, leaving them blind to more basic approaches. "Target located," whispered Torres, consulting a simple compass-like device that detected the unique magnetic signature of Kraxan power cores. Their main engineering section is 2 levels down. The device was brilliant in its simplicity. No electronics, no quantum sensors, just precisely arranged magnetic elements that responded to the massive electromagnetic fields generated by alien technology. On the bridge, Admiral Vexthor was facing a crisis of unprecedented magnitude. His ground forces were in disarray, their most advanced weapons rendered useless by the humans' cunningly designed countermeasures. Worse, his ship's internal sensors were reporting impossible readings. Sections of the vessel seemed to disappear and reappear at random, as if reality itself was becoming unreliable. "Sir," Dr. Ixlera reported, her voice trembling with both fear and fascination, "I believe the humans have seeded our ship with quantum-entangled particles. They're not hacking our systems. They're making our own sensor technology give us false readings by manipulating the quantum states our crystals naturally respond to." Commander Chen watched the chaos unfold from her command center, monitoring the situation through a network of observers using nothing more sophisticated than precisely positioned mirrors and optical sensors. "Commence final phase," she ordered. "Let's show them what happens when you bring a quantum computer to a logic puzzle." Throughout the Kraxan flagship, small devices planted by Torres' team began activating. They weren't bombs or EMP generators. They were simple mechanical oscillators, each one tuned to a frequency that would interact with the ship's crystalline structure in subtle but devastating ways. The effect was like introducing a single wrong note into a perfect symphony. The crystalline technology that formed the backbone of Kraxan civilization operated on principles of harmony and resonance. The humans hadn't tried to overpower or outlast these systems. They had simply introduced discord into the pattern. "Our weapons are failing," shouted a Kraxan officer as control panels throughout the ship began to crystallize and crack. "The matrix is destabilizing." The mighty flagship, pride of the Kraxan fleet, was being defeated not by superior firepower, but by the equivalent of someone humming off-key. Admiral Vexthor watched in horror as his sophisticated command interfaces dissolved into useless chunks of crystal. "How?" he demanded. "How are they doing this with such primitive technology?" Dr. Ixlera's response was interrupted by a voice broadcasting on every remaining functional system aboard the ship. Commander Chen, speaking in calm, measured tones. "Admiral Vexthor, your ship is now under our control. Your ground forces are neutralized, and your technology has been compromised. We could destroy your vessel entirely, but that would be wasteful. Instead, I offer you a choice." Torres and his team had reached their final position, simple mechanical detonators in hand. They didn't need to destroy the ship's power core. They just needed to disrupt its crystalline structure enough to make it unusable without human assistance to repair it. "You can retreat," Chen continued, "taking with you the lesson that technological superiority means nothing without the wisdom to use it properly. Or you can continue this fight, and we will be forced to demonstrate just how vulnerable your entire empire might be to our primitive methods." The admiral looked around his bridge, at the failing systems and confused officers, and realized the humans had achieved something far more devastating than military victory. They had shattered the Kraxan Empire's fundamental assumption about the nature of progress and power. In the silence that followed, everyone present, human and Kraxan alike, understood that this moment would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The question wasn't whether the Kraxan would retreat, but how many other species would soon learn about the day when humanity proved that the path to the stars didn't always require walking the road others had paved. The great crystalline halls of the Kraxan High Council had never been so silent. Admiral Vexthor stood before the assembled leaders of his civilization, his scales dulled with shame as he delivered his report on the Helios 7 incident. The display behind him showed footage of their mighty warships rendered helpless by what appeared to be little more than cleverly arranged rocks and springs. "The humans," he concluded, "have demonstrated a mastery of warfare that transcends our understanding of technological progress. They defeated our most advanced systems not by matching them, but by fundamentally challenging our assumptions about how battles are fought." In her office on Helios 7, Commander Chen was having a very different kind of meeting. Representatives from Earth's United Defense Council had arrived to discuss the implications of their victory. The room was deliberately sparse. No holographic displays or quantum interfaces, just simple paper maps and mechanical models. "The Kraxan's defeat has caused a shockwave throughout known space," Admiral Zhang reported, spreading out a star chart. "Every advanced civilization is reassessing their defense strategies. They're all asking the same question: how many of their systems could be compromised by what they previously dismissed as primitive approaches?" Captain Torres, newly promoted for his successful infiltration mission, studied the map thoughtfully. "They still don't quite understand, do they? This was never about primitive versus advanced technology. It was about choosing the right tool for the job." Back in the Kraxan High Council, Dr. Ixlera had taken the floor. Her presentation was causing considerable distress among the assembled leaders. "The humans didn't reject advanced technology," she explained. "They transcended our very conception of technological progress. While we focused on making our crystals more perfect, they learned to use iron and stone in ways we have forgotten were possible." The implications were staggering. Throughout the galaxy, civilizations had followed a fairly linear path of technological development, from physical tools to energy weapons, from simple machines to quantum computers. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had gone backward to move forward, rediscovering and reinventing principles that other species had abandoned. On Earth, the United Defense Council was already implementing lessons learned from Helios 7. Training programs were being revised to emphasize understanding of fundamental principles rather than reliance on specific technologies. The message was clear. True advancement came not from having the most sophisticated tools, but from understanding how to use any tool effectively. The Kraxan High Council reached a historic decision. For the first time in their history, they would send diplomats rather than conquerors. The humans had earned more than their fear. They had earned their respect and curiosity. Commander Chen received the news of the Kraxan's diplomatic overture with a knowing smile. She turned to look out her window at the colony's defense installations, now no longer disguised. The simple mechanical devices, powered by principles as old as physics itself, stood alongside quantum sensors and plasma cannons. Each had its place, each its purpose. The greatest technology, she mused to Torres as they watched a Kraxan diplomatic vessel descend through the atmosphere, is the one that gets the job done. Sometimes that's a quantum computer, sometimes it's a lever and fulcrum. The trick is knowing which is which. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had demonstrated that the path to the stars wasn't a straight line of ever-advancing technology, but a web of interconnected principles waiting to be rediscovered and reproposed. As the Kraxan diplomats approached the colony, they passed under an arch made of simple stone and steel, a reminder that true power lies not in the sophistication of one's tools, but in the wisdom to use them well. In the years that followed, the Helios 7 doctrine became standard study at military academies across known space. It taught that technological superiority was meaningless without tactical wisdom, and that the most dangerous enemy was not the one with the most advanced weapons, but the one who best understood the fundamental principles of how things worked. The humans had changed the rules of warfare forever, not by creating new technology, but by showing that every technology, no matter how ancient or simple, had its place in the grand dance of combat and strategy. In doing so, they had earned something far more valuable than victory. They had earned the galaxy's respect.